Mark, so I've honestly been so excited to chat to you on this. I followed Inflo I literally remember one of my first exams is the audit exam in the professional level where I came across Inflo as a software and I thought, okay, right, this is like someone actually building like real modern SaaS for audit specifically. And it was even better that it's someone who had come like as a UK born and bred entrepreneur. So I guess this is me as a fan just wanting to like ask things about audit, things about AI, which are like pretty much my two favorite topics. So I've been so excited. I'd love to just start, and can you share like where Inflow is at today?
So Inflow so we're in May 2026. We are 200 employees now. We have customers in 117 countries. As you mentioned, we have the software as part of the ACA exam here in the UK. And we've really been focused on breaking the American market in the last 3 years. And we now count in the UK more than 70% of the top 100 firms use Inflow as part of their audit services in some way, shape, or form. And in the US, we are growingly becoming the leading cloud audit platform, digital audit platform, AI enabled audit platform, however you want to skin that. We are really disrupting the incumbents there. And we're seeing a big movement of some of the largest firms towards a more innovative audit approach. So it's really pleasing to see 10 and a half years in now, the level of success that business is now seeing.
Okay, and how many people in total working for
We've just
Inflow?
gone through 200 people here at Inflow now.
Got you. And culture-wise, you're quite remote first, is that right?
We're 100% remote workforce, so we have no offices at all across the world. We focus on hiring the best talent we possibly can wherever they're located. And we really try and embrace a culture of flexible working and autonomous working. So, really just treating people like grown ups, mature people. As long as we can really align on the vision and the strategy, we really then trust our people to go and execute on what they need to do, giving them clarity of what their roles and responsibilities are. So we don't use physical space to be able to manage our people.
Am I right in saying you hire quite a few accountants out of practice?
We do. We believe that one of our key differentiators is that we fully understand our customers and the challenges that they face. And the way that we achieve that is through hiring former auditors to perform roles across the business. So not just in terms of shaping how the product works and the functionality that's in there. We actually don't have any salespeople in our business. If people want to explore the platform, they work with former auditors who will help them understand their pain points, understand how the technology can help, do demonstrations, etc. We have former CPAs who are going to then lead the onboarding, the implementation, the training. We use former CPAs in our customer success team. So across the whole life cycle journey of working with Inflow, you get to work with experienced CPAs who understand the jargon and the terminology that firms use, but most importantly, understand the pain points and the challenges of getting new technology into the business, because it doesn't matter how good technology is, it really relies on users embracing the technology. And that's where we found former auditors a far better place to do that than salespeople, for example, traditional salespeople from a SaaS perspective.
Okay, I want to get into that. So I would have thought, thinking about people who had gone and become accountants and gone into audit specifically, I wouldn't have thought they'd have too much overlap with the skill set of someone who was going to work at a fast growing SaaS business. Reconcile that for me. Is that completely wrong? Yeah. How do you think about it?
Why not? Why wouldn't you think accounts could work in a high growth sales and SaaS business?
I think I would have thought risky software company, like you guys are very much like scale, not startup now, but a business without the the legacy of say like traditional accounting firms, the like consistency of role, knowing the tasks to be done. I just wouldn't have thought that the personalities would attract.
So first, we need to be careful we don't stereotype all accountants as being like one certain perspective of like risk averse, like, you know, stereotypical bean counting accountants. There is a far broader spectrum. I used to be an accountant. I guess I still am an accountant. I still have my letters behind my name. Although it's a long time since I prepared a set of financial statements, shall we say. There's a very broad spectrum of people that work in accounting. And what I think can potentially hold the profession back at times is thinking that there are only really two career pathways if you start in accounting. You could become a partner, or you could become a finance director by moving into industry. And that's kind of like what I was told when I joined the profession, right? One day you could become a partner, and if you don't want to do that, or you're not good enough to become a partner, then you can move into industry and become a finance director or a chief financial officer. And I think that's complete bullshit, to be quite honest with you, because the skills that you acquire working in accounting are far broader, right? So even if you're just an audit manager, right? You're responsible for like billing, for budgeting, forecasting, like all of these different things, which are way beyond just core financial skills. And so for us, we believe that the skills that CPAs and accountants pick up working in audit can be twisted in lots of different ways and can fulfill the needs of very different roles. So we can interview a candidate and we can instantly tell, are they maybe really strong with relationships, in which case maybe customer success would be great for them. Or actually, are they a really good problem solver, in which case that's maybe more what you traditionally call a sales role, but we would refer to as our audit adoption team. And they'll work with earlier stage customers. So you kind of need to think about more the skills and the competencies that CPAs and accountants are acquiring. And I think that's even more important in the world of AI, that we think about more the skills, competencies, experience that people have, not try and pigeonhole people into what roles they are capable of doing.
Yeah, 100%. I would have thought that you were a bit of an anomaly. That's one of the reasons I looked up to you so much, is leaving the Big Four, especially after you'd gone through the manager grades, etc. I've seen a few like really entrepreneurial people who like teetered around qualifying, maybe left before they qualified, or as they qualified, then they went on to do something very different. You were embedded in PwC and you led a huge project, I believe, in PwC. And then you left. Like, would you say you are an anomaly, or actually have there been tons of people like that who have come to join Inflo?
The way I think about it, Sam, is, so from my personal perspective, I viewed my career in the Big Four at PwC as somewhat of a trade that I was party to, in the sense of I knew that they were getting a lot out of me, and certainly some of the big projects that I led and the initiatives I was advancing. But at the same time, I knew that I was gaining incredible experience from being there. And so the key thing for me was, at what point does the balance swing here where I'm not getting as much out of this as they're getting out of me? And I probably was going to leave as soon as I qualified. And then it was like, okay, actually, there's this new challenge in front of me, so I'm going to give it one more year because I've got this exciting thing I get to work on. And each year there was something that I could see that was like, okay, I'm going to learn a lot from doing that. So I'm going to stay another year. And so I think I was fortunate in the sense of there was always something that was on the table to challenge me. And I think that the people that I worked for and with recognized that I needed a challenge to keep me energized and keep me enthused. And so they kept putting it in front of me. maybe that's different for others who leave earlier and have that entrepreneurial experience. They want to go and do something, but they maybe don't view it in the same way I was viewing it in terms of it's a skills versus experience kind of trade. Or maybe they just didn't have those same opportunities. But I think there's inherently a lot of very entrepreneurial people in the Big Four. The challenge comes is that you're pretty well paid. And so it's a big leap to walk away from a very comfortable role where, let's be frank, you're not really going to get fired in an accounting firm if you're a good performer. You've got a safe job, a safe salary, and you might have a family as well and things like that. And then to make that leap is a very big, risky leap. And to your point earlier, some accountants inherently have that risk aversion. That can be what maybe keeps people who could be more entrepreneurial from leaving the Big Four.
You probably could have done quite a few different things when you left. Talk to me about how you viewed the opportunities as you're leaving. So that's how you viewed the stay or leave decision. But then you didn't have to like completely from scratch build an awesome company. Were there things in the middle you were also considering?
So at a point where I concluded that I didn't want to stay the course with PwC, and there were a lot of reasons why I wanted to go and do something different. I did have a few options, but it probably boiled down to one of the other Big Four was trying to recruit me to come and build all of their technology to help them catch up. They generally at the time PwC was seen as being ahead of the curve, and one of the Big Four that was further behind knew that I was leading a lot of the PwC technology build, and so tried to recruit me. And then I had starting Inflo as the thing that was really exciting for me. I come from a farming background, and so I've not been brought up in the big corporate world that PwC and the Big Four represents. And so for me, there was always going to be excitement about creating something from nothing. So when I looked at the opportunity to join another Big Four firm, I was like, well, I'm going to go and do exactly what I've done for the last 3 years, building the same kind of technology. And again, I'm going to be helping one firm solve this problem. And for me, what I wanted to do was leave more of a legacy behind when I retired. Like I could say, I did that, I built that. And I was never really felt like doing that inside one accounting firm was really that impactful. And so I wanted to move the broader profession forward. And so I knew that, to be quite candid, Sam, that if I spent 6 months in a startup and it completely failed, I'd learn more doing that for 6 months than I would probably 6 years building something else in the Big Four, considering I'd already built a lot of stuff. So I just basically backed myself that one way or another, the startup world would be an exciting learning experience. And that to me was the thing that I was always craving, was the experiences that I could learn the most from.
How did you gather the confidence to back yourself?
I've never been short of confidence.
Okay, so you think growing up, there were signals of like self-belief and confidence. Like, did it come about internally, or do you have an environment externally that cultivated that belief?
I was always incredibly competitive as a kid. I would not let anyone beat me at anything. So I don't know where that came from. I think my dad probably instilled some of that in me in the early days, where he would never let me win. I had to earn the win. And so I was incredibly competitive at school. I would always try and get the top grades, be the top person playing football, whatever it was. And that got fueled at university, where I was in a very competitive degree program that was sponsored by PwC. It got stirred even further when you're at PwC, because the Big Four's all about competing to get to the next grade, to get to the next level, etc. So, and I'd always done well, so that kind of bred a confidence. I've always been careful not to go above and beyond the line and go towards arrogance. So always try and stay humble with it, but always backed my ability to do something. And so I felt that I could be successful in this space.
How have you kept the humility? Like you've done really well. Like your company's awesome. Like you're at the top of the game. Like how did you keep humility?
My wife and kids completely ridicule me all the time, so they keep me humble and keep me grounded. So
What about, so your kids haven't been here for your whole career? Like before then, has it always been your partner keeping you grounded, or like is there anything else?
yeah, I think Terry is ultimately the key person that keeps me grounded. I also really try and focus on no one person can achieve the kind of success that Inflo's become. It takes a whole group. And so one of my learnings through the last 10 and a half years is that a lot of leaders like focus on becoming the best leader that they can possibly be. And that has merit. But one of my biggest takeaways, and this largely came from reading The Geek Way, which is a fantastic book by Andrew McAfee, is that actually the biggest impact a leader can have is in evolving the group. And so I focus my effort and time and attention really on trying to make sure that the group is appreciated, make sure that, any award we get, it's because of the team, it's not because of me. And so I focus on trying to make sure that the team is evolving, the team is learning, the team is getting the credit and the boost that they need. And that inherently keeps me humble as well, because I think you see some of those more egotistical leaders, right? They're taking credit for basically things they've not even touched. I try and flip it the other way around. And, even if there's an individual award or something that I'm recognized for, ultimately, it's the team that really achieved it. It's not me personally that was able to build Inflo to the point that it's at now.
In building that team, how do you think now about characteristics, traits, backgrounds? Like, how do you assess a given candidate? If you were, say, to assess me, what type of criteria would you look for?
First and foremost, it's centered on our core values. So our core values are all about openness, ownership, science, and agility. So 4 core values that we focus on. That's the general fit of a candidate, and you can assess that fairly quickly through some interactions, etc. But once we've got past that initial, does this person feel like somebody who would fit in here? We then focus on, for each role that we're hiring for, what are the characteristics that we're actually looking to see in candidates here? And so we try to design more hands-on assessments that are trying to assess for those characteristics. And I'll give you an example to try and bring that to life, because people think they're interviewing for characteristics, but they're not really. They're just looking for examples. So a good example might be a characteristic we might want to see in a particular role might be going the extra mile. Somebody who's willing to do more than they're simply asked to do. So the way we might assess for that is we might set, as part of the interview process, a test. Marketing's a good example, right? I want you to pick one of these 2 options. So here's 2 options for you to do. Build a campaign and, do a social media kind of strategy or something like that. And what we're actually looking to see is, does the candidate do both of them? Even though they were only told to do one, do they do the easy one, or do they do both of them? And so we had an example where we actually hired a candidate who, on the face of the first interviews, was probably our second choice. And there was a standout leader, but the standout person in the first round basically took the easy option of the 2 and only did one of them. Then the other candidate then did both of them. And so that showed to us that they were going the extra mile. So it's a different way of interviewing. It's so much more important now in the world where everybody has AI. to be able to complete all of their application processes in a far more effective way than before. People are using AI across the hiring process. So we use that assessment of characteristics as a way of trying to break through some of the AI stuff and to actually find the right candidates we want for the role.
Okay, so it's like exercises that tease out the traits rather than seeking like previous examples, because anyone can prepare a set of examples and fit them so that they appear like they have your values.
Exactly.
How
Especially
do
when
you,
our values are out there, so people can research them very easily and they can come prepared, right?
yeah, or their agents can. How do you, what exercises do you use to test for like, science? Like, talk to me about that. What does that mean? What's that value?
It's really around using data to make decisions. So science is about, okay, so we run experiments before we commit to big decisions. So you might have maybe heard of the one-way versus two-way door analogy that Jeff Bezos uses. So we use experiments to either test before we commit to a two-way door, or to make sure that a one-way door is completely lined up before we go there. So it's really, we're looking for data. Do people make decisions based on gut instinct, or do they make it based on actually like A/B testing and thinking through what does the data tell us, etc.? So that's how we think about science.
I want to go back to your competitive nature and then thinking about grades and then the degree program that you got onto with PwC in Newcastle, which I think at the time I think it was 2003 was like pretty forward thinking around like a big four firm sponsoring a degree program, and you did practical work experience while you were on that program. Back then, was that one of the pinnacle roles to land out of school? And then now, where do you think accounting sits and ranks as the top people leave school?
So at the time, so you're absolutely right. The degree program I joined was a collaboration between PwC, Newcastle University, and the ICAW. And it was, how quickly can we get people who are leaving college at 18 into the qualified accountancy status? So we got basically the maximum amount of exemptions you could possibly get, because our degree program was effectively as much of the ACA qualification as you were allowed to do before you were full-time employed. So it was, at the time, so new that nobody really knew about it, but it quickly became the pinnacle accounting degree program in the UK. It was only out of Newcastle for quite some time. So I was the second year to go through it. And to give you context, if I'd applied in year 5, I wouldn't have got in. My grades wouldn't have been good enough because they had such demand for it. They basically upped it to, you had to have all A grades to get in. I was able to get in at the point where not everybody knew about it. And so it was very in demand, and it fast tracked us massively through the PwC ranks. So we joined 1 year ahead of our same age group. So we'd shortcut that. But we'd also at university done 3 busy seasons while we were at university. So in audit, most of your learning, probably about 70% of or 80% of the learning you experience is busy season. It's complete bias for the whole year because that's where the bulk of the work is. So we basically got fast tracked through PwC, and that's why I was probably able to get a lot further, a lot quicker than your average graduate intake. As that degree has been so successful, they've actually scaled it both in terms of PwC now has more locations that they do it in, and other big four firms have tried to replicate it for their pipeline. You've got to think about it, it's a real win for a big four firm if you're getting this group of students who you can bring in for busy season, and then they can go back out of the business during the non-busy season. Works really well for them. We got paid while we were there as well. So at university, we were a little bit different to your average university student. We had money coming in, and at the same time, we were working early hours as well. So pros and cons, but it certainly helped to fast track my career and the experience I got there, Sam.
And so that was the pinnacle then. Right now, if say someone's thinking about leaving school or they're thinking about their jobs out of university, does accounting sit in the same echelon as it did back then?
I think so. But I don't have any data to really support that at this point in time. So I know that the ICAW's been reporting record student numbers applying into the ACA qualification here in the UK. So that's positive. I think we've got some pipeline correction that's improved talent entering the profession in the US market. So I think all signs that I'm hearing is that the profession is still highly regarded as a career pathway. And despite all the rhetoric around AI and things like that, I think the profession is well positioned to be an exciting career for future graduates.
What is the bull case for a career in accounting now if AI is going to do all of the grunt work?
Well, if you think about it, well, what is it that the broader macro business world is really struggling with when it comes to AI? What is the existential challenge with something like AI?
What are the people going to do?
One aspect of it.
Well, I don't know. What
High
do you
level,
think?
high level, I think that AI creates challenges around trust. As in, do we trust what the AI is producing? Do we trust what the people who have the control over AI are doing behind the scenes, etc.? So for me, AI creates this bigger question around trust. And accountancy has established itself as being the brokers of trust. What is an audit if you boil it down in its simplest terms? It is an objective verification that you can trust the financial information that's been put in front of you. Now, accountancy has already started to move beyond the financial books and records to things like climate accounting, etc., etc. There is a strong opportunity for accountancy to be the brokers of trust in an AI enabled world. So I would look at it and say, yeah, sure, AI is going to automate significant swathes of what a traditional accountant or CPA does. But there is a huge opportunity to move into, which is who are going to be the people who effectively provide, verify, and give the assurance over these AI capabilities that are now going to be pervasively used across the business world.
Okay, Mark, I'm gonna put a challenging view to you. I'm not saying that this is a view I hold, but I think it's one that someone could reach. And yeah, maybe it has some flaws, but I'm keen to hear what your reaction to it is. So AI now can build software. Many of these coding agents are better than human engineers on some metrics. With that, a lot of repetitive audit tasks, a lot of work done in an EMS can be performed now by AI. Why do I need a audit engagement management system built with software by a company that's built for humans to use? What's the future viability of Inflo in a world where AI can build it and can do it?
It's a very good question. Firstly, you start from a position of, well, the audit needs to comply with the audit standards. The audit standards at this point in time, and I think I can safely say for the foreseeable future, requires certain tasks to be performed by the audit engagement leader. And that audit engagement leader must satisfy human characteristics. So inherently, an audit cannot be fully automated in your world, Sam. There needs to be some level of human interaction in this. So there's the start point, right? There needs to be at least some level of human interaction. So the engagement leader must perform a certain set of tasks, and they must be human. That's your start point. From there, the debate exists, well, what is the split between human and AI? And on one end of the scale, it might be, well, AI is just going to do everything that a human doesn't need to do per the standards. And the other end of the scale is going to be, well, inherently we need a human to be over the top of AI all of the time and make sure that whatever the AI is doing is appropriate compared to what previously would have been done. I don't know exactly where we're going to land on this scale, to be quite frank with you. And so it is a very hot topic for my team, for us. Where do we want to try and pitch Inflo's proposition on that scale going forward? And where do we think our customers and the broader profession as a whole wants to position itself? I don't know the answer today. We're in May 2026. There's a huge opportunity I see to go towards the end of the scale, which is heavy automation of the traditional audit service. The question then becomes, what does that mean for the people who are currently doing that kind of work? And that, I think, is going to be driven somewhat by the market in terms of what does it want from the audit of the future. Is the audit in 3 to 5 years' time a completely compliance-based exercise which can be heavily automated by AI? And that might be your low-level grunt work. But I think in reality, if we really think that judgmental areas of the audit can only be done by humans, I think we're kidding ourselves. AI is much more capable and competent at going beyond the simple tasks that, to be quite frank, could have been automated with non-AI technology, to actually leaning into highly judgmental, highly sophisticated areas of the audit process. If the audit is just compliance, AI is going to significantly impact how that work is done. For me, there's a big opportunity here to use AI as a way of reframing the value of an audit. Audit is not just about getting a signed piece of paper at the end in your financial statements. Audit can give you something far more meaningful. And we need to, as a profession, define what that value and that meaningful is, because that's how we can then shift where our people focus their time, effort, and energy. Because a lot of the broader value that an audit can deliver inherently requires more human touch to it than some of the more rote compliance aspects of the audit process.
Do you think that a new value prop to society has to come from an accounting firm? Does it have to come from the majority of the services from a big four accounting firm, or could it come from a vendor?
I think that everyone has a role to play in this. I believe that accounting firms are best placed to redefine what their service proposition is. But I understand there is a nervousness around doing that to a very traditional, well-established service. Naturally, the market is heavily influenced by where the big four go with their proposition. But the big four have a very heavy bias of clients who are more public markets. And a lot of this opportunity for greater value sits beyond the public listed companies. It's in the SME space where these businesses can benefit far more significantly from the experience and from the skills that sit within an audit and accounting firm. So, Sam, I think that accounting firms should be taking the lead. I think that they're going to be influenced by what others are doing. I personally think that we should be far more closely listening to what clients want from this service. It consistently surprises me that accounting firms don't use their clients as a key data point for driving their innovation efforts. It's something I speak about across the world. And whenever I run workshops and seminars, the one group of people we are never talking to about what our innovation endeavors should be centered on is clients. And it completely gobsmacks me, because do you think the biggest companies in the world, like Microsoft and Apple and Google, are doing their innovation based on what they think? Or do you think they're sitting with clients and working through exactly like, what does the market need? What is the kind of trend here? So I think there's a lot of pieces here that will move this forward. I think that vendors like Inflo will continue to open up the opportunities that are available. Clients will start to create a demand side movement here, but it's ultimately going to sit with accounting firms as to whether they lean into this opportunity.
When you talk about the client, who do you mean? Because I've heard some say that the client to a accounting firm is the capital markets, and they're actually serving the wider set of stakeholders. The business or entity that they're auditing is just the person who pays the bill. Is that how, do you see it slightly differently? Do these companies actually want this audit?
I view it more specifically as the person who's paying the bill, are they getting value from the service? So yes, from a bigger macro existential piece, right? The audit serves the shareholders in the business, serves the directors more specifically, if we're talking about legal perspective on this. But to me, I would never want to be selling a service that the person paying the bill is reluctantly paying me the bill for. Like, if I'm in that world, I'm going to be, you know what, just don't bother. If you don't want my services, that's fine. I won't give them to you. I'll give them to somebody else who does want them. So I've always struggled with this whole aspect of audit, that the question of, would you have an audit if you didn't need an audit? And I think if the answer to that isn't a slam dunk yes, then we need to do work on making sure that the person who's paying the bill is getting value and getting return from the investment they're spending in this service. So I might be more evangelical around the audit and what it represents than most. But for me, I was pained if I was working with one of my clients' finance teams and they really hated the audit process. That was something that I felt like, well, that's a real shame, isn't it? Because you're paying a lot for this. I want you to be getting value from the work that we're putting into this.
How do you think about Inflo's competitors right now? And then with that, how are you uniquely positioned to take advantage of the new AI capabilities?
First and foremost, I don't worry about our competitors. They seem to spend a lot of time worrying about Inflo, but I spend zero time worrying about my competitors, because ultimately I'm a big believer in, if you focus on executing your own game plan, it doesn't really matter what everybody else is doing. You'll find the right firms to work with. And ultimately, I'm not trying to work with every single accounting firm out there. That's not my goal. My goal is to find the right accounting firms who see and understand our vision for the future of accounting, and they want to be part of it. So first and foremost, we don't spend any time looking at what competitors are doing. How are we uniquely positioned? Inherently, AI boils down to having really good data. Yeah, there's lots to it, but if I'd simplify it down, I'd say the best AI is going to be driven by the best data. Now, Inflo comes from a heritage of being a data analytics company, and not just a data analytics company that spends time producing some pretty visualizations. We actually got really down and deep into the weeds very early in our company's history and said, right, we need to be able to extract the right information from all of these different accounting systems, get it into a common data model format so as we can drive AI automation. Now, at the time, it was data analytics and automation, right? So what we've got is effectively a DNA, which is all around how do we capture, structure, and leverage data to drive automation, but now to be able to fuel AI. So we're well positioned compared to, say, a desktop tool that's got a load of files sat in it, because we've already started to embed the foundations that are needed for AI to be adopted at scale quickly. And another piece that I think has really set us up well, Sam, is when we created a lot of our data analytics automations, we embedded into the platform a concept we referred to as Inflo's hybrid intelligence, so Inflo High. And what we did there was we framed it as a recommendation for the auditor to review and consider. So for 8 years now, Inflo has had embedded in it the concept of this technology gives you a recommendation, the user reviews and takes forward that recommendation. And ultimately, that's what a lot of the AI proposition is going to end up becoming. It's here's an AI recommendation, human in the loop, you decide whether it's good or not. The beauty is, we've had regulators reviewing that for 8 years now in Inflo. Regulators understand the concept that we've adopted. They understand the kind of way we shaped the idea of recommendations then taken forward by human and owned by human. And so for us, we're not having to break any new ground with regulators to try and get them comfortable with this is how AI is going to work. We're simply leaning into the existing framing that we've done here that educated regulators on how technology and humans work together. And now that technology is just a more advanced technology than it was before.
Got you. Thinking about since the ChatGPT era, and to be honest, since the second inflection point, as many are saying around the end of calendar year 25 with Opus 4.6, just dramatically changed how effective these AI models were at coding. How have you thought about the need for inflow transformation? There's been some great pre-LLM era companies like Ramp and Rillit, which I'd now say have like merged themselves into being AI native. And then there's some awesome companies who have formed after the LLM era, things like Harvey, Legora in the professional services space, who are like naturally born out of this. Inflow was around before. How have you thought about transforming the org? Has there been a need to transform you? Were you already there?
There's absolutely been a need. So we likened this internally to when we entered the market as a cloud-based platform, we had this huge unfair advantage on the desktop legacy providers because we were cloud native. We didn't have any of the baggage. We didn't have any of that kind of legacy way of working as a business. We weren't selling software implementations and then trying to do renewals. We were coming in as a completely different licensing model, different architectural structure, etc. So we talked internally and said, same thing's going to happen here, guys, if we're not sharp, because AI native is going to come in and they've got a totally different way of working here. And we're going to be left behind with all of this cloud baggage if we're not careful, that our business model is going to get disrupted. Our technology is going to be archaic. We're now one of the incumbents, guys, whereas previously we were the disruptor to the market. And so we started from a place, Sam, where to be credible in the market, we have to have implemented this pervasively across our own business. We have to have done the reps. We have to have learned where it works, where it doesn't work, etc. Because we can't credibly go and talk to our clients about helping them adopt AI if we haven't done it ourselves. I used to use the same analogy in the market and said, if you're an accounting firm, you can't go and sell cybersecurity services if you're doing your audit using a piece of 30-year-old technology. You're not credible. So we embraced that internally. We've really lent into how do we use AI across our business to really transform the way that we work internally. It naturally fit quite well with our team because we're always trying to think about how can we do more without having to recruit loads more people. It's always been about working smarter, not harder. And that's given us a lot of experience that then pays into, it's not just about having the AI capabilities here. Any accounting firm can have the AI capabilities. What they're lacking in a lot of time is the change management and skills developments needed to be able to really utilize these technologies. So we've been learning through experience, and that puts us in a really, I think, a better place to help accounting firms who are having to go through that same journey than maybe the AI native company who's sat next to us going, oh, we understand AI. Yeah, maybe you understand the technology slightly better because you're from that era and you've immersed yourself in it. But it's not just about the technology. It's about change management. It's about implementation. It's about trying to move through the journey and getting from where you are today to being an AI enabled accounting firm. And we feel like the reps that we've gone through put us in a much better position to actually help firms with the implementation journey that they need to go on as well.
Mark, I want to talk about how you developed your personal brand over the time of leading Inflo. I look at your content, both from individual posts on LinkedIn about Inflo, from posts that you share about your personal life, and then also from your ability to build up a voice of influence, thinking to the audit opinion as a newsletter. Talk to me about how you started with that. We can get on a bit about like what you're focused on now, but I think a lot of people out there are quite apprehensive of talking about these things online. How did you get going? How did you build the muscle?
So firstly, I think there's just a huge gap in the accounting market where audit specifically is not talked about in the same way that like bookkeeping is talked about. So you had this kind of big wave with Zero and Intuit, etc., really driving this whole different narrative around accounting and bookkeeping. And there's like so many people who are influencers or on LinkedIn, etc., and they're talking about accounting, but they're actually talking about bookkeeping, and that's great. But my passion's audit. That's where, to be candid, accounting firms make a lot more money from audit than they do from bookkeeping. And so there's really not many people who are talking about audit when you distill it down. So for me, that's felt like a missed opportunity that like this is such an important service. We seem to let the narrative around audit be dictated by journalists who are basically going to just simply critique audit every single time there's some sort of company hiccup that's in the market. And so I wanted to try to create more conversation around audit specifically, try and paint it in a more positive light, but also audit's incredibly technical and nobody's really sharing like practical advice or ideas or templates or resources or just experience in this particular space. And so that's where my content starts from. It starts from a place of, hey, if I can share something of value, then we lead with value, and I don't really care whether you buy Inflo because of that. I'm trying to help you move your firm forward and do something, which people are skeptical about, right? They're always a bit like, oh, well, he's the CEO of Inflo, so I'm sure there's some sort of underlying message here that means that I need to buy his product. No, I come from a genuine place of like, if I can share something with you that's going to help you, I will happily do that. And then as we kind of went through that process in the earlier stages, you kind of trying to work out how do you differentiate between Mark the person and Inflo the company. And in the very early days, that's quite difficult to do because every time people see Inflo represented on the stage, it's Mark talking there. And so what we tried to do over time was try to break those two things up. Because, for example, I want to be more opinionated in my content. I want to share personal perspectives on things, but I don't want those to necessarily be the inflow position on things. Inflow needs to be have a different view, a different voice than what a more opinionated person like myself wants to do. And so we really had more success as soon as we broke those two things up. And so that's why I have a separate newsletter, separate branding for it, etc., is to try and move it as far away from inflow as possible, to make it true thought leadership, to make it true individual opinions. And again, lead with value, but also recognize people also sometimes just want to have a bit of a laugh about things, right? They don't want to be able to see the less serious side of the world that we work in. So I'm always trying to bring a variety of perspectives to my content, but my content is all about trying to help people progress their firm and progress themselves in their leadership role.
How do you generate your content yourself? And what I mean by that is like do you take one day a week and generate the content for the week? Like asking for all those people who are trying to make content and trying to operationalize it personally, finding the time to even to think of the ideas. How do you do it?
It varies. So I do enjoy long haul flights as great times to be able to like zone in. So I wrote the third book that I wrote on a single flight from the UK to Florida. So great kind of 7 or 8 hours, don't connect to the internet and just write. I find that the content that is I'm most passionate about, there'll just be a time where I'll just be naturally, I'll be commuting somewhere, or I'll be, sat watching my daughters swim up and down the swimming pool for the 5th time this week, and I'll be like, okay, I can just quit. Like, there's something that's bugging me. I just want to write it down in a note on my phone or something like that, and then I'll send it to my team, and they'll polish it up and they'll do the graphics and things like that. But for me personally, it's around having like almost like a hopper. I have like a place where I can just capture ideas. Like I don't have time to write about this, but right now, but like that's a hook. That's something that I want to do. Like something about that. And it's then trying to go, okay, these are my ideas. I'm not going to have enough ideas to like have one post a week, one post every day of the week, like I'm regularly posting. So it's then, okay, like what are my other feeds, if you like? So Financial Times covering anything about audit or accounting, that's probably going to be interesting. I can probably share a perspective on that. What else is going on in the profession? Like what ICAW or AICPA, what are they talking about? What are they putting out there? So I think, my advice would be set some realistic expectations. Don't shoot for posting every single day a week to start with. Twice a week would be great to start with. Think about how do you capture your ideas as a different set of behaviors to how do you then write. Blocking time out for writing is great, especially when you've got the ideas ready to go. You can just start writing. We're trying to move into more video content as well. So how do you try and come up with a good process for that? And try and use pieces of content multiple times on the assumption that people aren't going to see every one of your posts. So can you take like one topic or one longer form blog post and create like 3 or 4 posts about that, for example, in different formats? So that's how we try and think about it. So
Cool. What's the reason for more video?
I think that there's far too much AI bullshit on LinkedIn, and a way of making sure that that it's me and not some AI version of me is it being a video.
Makes sense.
I can also swear if I'm on a video, and I have a habit for swearing, whereas in a post I have to be slightly more reserved.
Did you, when you set up the Audit Opinion as a newsletter, were there other channels or mediums for communicating that you considered, or was it obviously a newsletter?
we felt that newsletter would work well because ultimately a lot of our prospective readers are still in their inbox. Still the best way of getting hold of them. So the newsletter created almost two opportunities to get into their inbox. One is the direct sign-ups to it, and the other is LinkedIn newsletters effectively get notified directly into your inbox. So we felt that was a format that would be worth taking a look at and experimenting with, and we found it to be fairly successful with our target market. We've got a very tight target audience that we're going after here, so we're not looking for mass numbers. We're looking for the right audience members, and so LinkedIn and email felt like the right way to try and tackle that.
Got you. Okay, so the focus there was where are the people that you want to target? Where's their attention? And then get to that. Cool. Last theme I want to pull on, Mark, is around capital, corporate structure, on two threads. One, the changing nature of the accounting firm with the influx of private equity. I want to talk about how that is changing the incentives of remunerating people within the firms, and then also how they think about buying decisions. And then after that, I'd love to talk about Inflo and your journey not raising capital, and whether anything's changing on that. But firstly, like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing differences between UK member firms and across the US with how they're owned and operated? And does this matter?
It matters. So the US right now are incredibly hot for private equity investment in accounting firms. It's not unrealistic to think that the majority of the largest accounting firms are going to be PE backed in the next few years, given the pace that's happening here. Two factors, effectively. You've got more new private equity investment coming into firms who have not previously had that, and you've also got mass consolidation where the private equity backed firms are buying and merging in a significant number of firms. So you're going to see those two dynamics basically collapse down the market in the US. The US think this is unique to the US. It's absolutely not. The UK started doing this before the US even got started on private equity. So we've got some fairly big firms here in the UK who have progressed much further down the private equity journey. They've flipped and sold to another private equity house, for example. So it's having a significant impact. And it's having a significant impact both on the firms who are taking investment and the firms who are not taking investment and are remaining independent. And that's effectively that. Why do you think a private equity is interested in accounting? They're interested in it because they see the opportunity to deploy capital, to invest in technology, to look at and evolve the business models of accounting firms, and to be blunt, make a significant return in a 3 to 5 year window. Now, the firms who've taken the money from private equity are going through a journey of investing heavily in technology, thinking differently about their talent model, thinking differently about their leadership structure, moving to a C-suite, for example. All of these things are happening, and they're happening quickly because the capital's being deployed. So we get a lot of firms come to us and they want to make change happen yesterday because they're on this 3 to 5 year window. The reality is that if you're an independent firm, you're going to be competing with somebody who is a private equity backed firm. And so what you're going to need to do to respond to them, well, you're probably going to need to invest in technology. You're probably going to need to think about your people and talent structure differently, and you're probably going to need to think about your leadership structure. You need to look at the same things. The question is, do you have the capital to be able to invest in those things and make those changes? And I would argue, probably. It might mean that your profit per partner may drop for 1 to 2 years, but ultimately you still can achieve the same kind of results in that 3 to 5 year horizon because you don't need a huge amount of capital to make some of these changes happen. Maybe they'll happen quicker if you had more capital, but you can make some of these changes happen even if you're independent, because we work with a lot of the independents, right? They're investing in technology. They're looking at these other areas. And so what it's doing is making the profession as a whole move forward more quickly than it would naturally have done without the influx of PE capital. So it's something that you need to be, in my opinion, very deliberate and intentional on. You're either in this or you're out of this. And you need to plan accordingly as to how you're going to then execute your firm's strategy with or without that capital.
Okay, that's an interesting take. And then how have you thought about Inflow's capital structure? I remember you famously said that one of the large challenger firms was your Series A, and I thought that was such an interesting framing. Have your thoughts changed at all on whether you should raise any more money in the future? Yeah.
We have always looked long term. So we want to establish Inflo as a long-term player in this profession. And so for us, most of the investment opportunities would create a defined timeline of an exit strategy being needed by said investor. It would also change some things fairly significantly culturally for our company. We have very much 200 people who are aligned to the vision of we control our own destiny, we own our own path here, and so that would be difficult to maintain. Not impossible, but difficult to maintain with an investor. But also, to be quite candid, we have all the capital we need. We don't have a shortage of capital. We are not resource poor here. We've got significant accounting firms who are paying us significant fees to use our product. So it's a very traditional way of building a business, but we build our business through charging our customers a fair price for a great product. And they don't leave us. They have long-term commitments to us. It's a very predictable revenue stream that we can build our business off of. And so we constantly question ourselves to say, well, if we did go and raise $75 million or $100 million, like some others in our space have done, what would we use that money for? And if we can't answer that question with a really strong, well, we do this, 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 and this, then what's the point in going and raising the capital? All it's going to do is create a headache. And I think some of the firms who've raised capital are going to have some very significant headaches to deal with in the next 2 to 3 years. Where can they achieve the kind of exit multiples and the returns that these investors are looking for? Because they're going to have to hit some very big numbers to be able to achieve those. And so for us, we're in a great place. We've got all the capital we need. We've got the sustainable business model that I think accounting firms really look for in a solution provider. Do you really want to put all of your audit work onto a platform that is basically on a strong burn rate and is going to need to raise again, and who knows whether they'll be able to raise again? Or do you want to put them into a platform that is independently run, managed well, and is scaling diligently to make sure it can meet the needs of its customers, and has clearly said that they're not going to exit to any of the incumbents and sell out? So that's what we want to put our flag in the ground and say, Sam, we are independent. We are here for the long term. We are going to build a business with significant impact. If that's not what you're all about, that's great. You don't need to work with us. But if you want to work with a supplier who's thinking differently about this, then we couldn't be more open and transparent about what we are and what we represent.
Awesome. Mark, I think that's a great place to leave. I've left with double the amount of questions than I started with. So you're definitely going to have to come on the show again. Hopefully we can do it in person as well. I know you travel a lot, but I'd love to make it happen in the studio, whether that's down in London or I'll come up and visit you guys. I think honestly what you've built is more than just an incredible company for the UK and globally. You're actually building a legacy for how audit and how audit technology should be run. So yeah, I really think this is one for the history books. Mark, thank you.
I'm flattered by what you said there, Sam. It's very credit to my team who've done a huge amount of this. They've taken it from a very early stage idea to a business with true impact. And yes, I'd love to come back for a follow up episode, and we'll definitely do it in person.